I would say the first and the most important thing to do is to always craft your CV around the job that you're applying for. The way that recruiters read CVs is they're looking for keywords, they're looking for those buzzwords.
For a really good CV, it doesn't need to be pages and pages. I don't think it needs to be as detailed as some people maybe think that it should be. You want to make sure that although your CV is detailed, it's easy to read for people who might not have that same level of expertise as you.
Additionally, I think it's worth thinking about your LinkedIn profile. One of the first things that the recruiter will do is go to your LinkedIn profile as well to kind of cross-reference what you've said in your CV. So I would say it's really important, to update your LinkedIn and almost have it like a mini CV and keep active on there as well.
I think people have this idea that recruiters don't even look at a CV, but it's completely the opposite. It would be a big portion of our job taken away if we weren't actually even looking at someone's CV.
A CV is often your first introduction to a company. It will contain information that's analysed by recruiters, and is often the key between landing an interview and not hearing back at all. In this episode of Engineering Pro, we're talking to Jamie Harris and Amber Sutch, who work with NES Fircroft on our talent acquisition team. We'll be getting their insights and advice on why CVs are still relevant and important, and some tips on how to craft a great CV with modern tools. We're also going to look at AI and CV tracking tools, and provide some insight on how to approach your CV to get past these digital gatekeepers and secure an interview. Jamie, Amber, thank you very much for joining me today on this podcast. Today we're talking about CVs, the importance of a good CV, and some sort of tips for candidates in making sure that their CV can be, will be seen first of all, to maximise their chances. So first of all, can I ask, we'll just go in turn just introducing yourselves, and then we'll go on with the questions. So Jamie, if you'd like to start.
Sure. So I am the talent acquisition manager here. So I've been with NES Fircroft for almost exactly a year. So my role is internal recruitment, essentially. We call it talent acquisition. Some other people call it internal recruitment. So my team, bring in the talent into the business. So this is a really appropriate call for us to be kind of talking through, because we read through CVs, especially recruiter CVs, daily.
Yeah, so I'm part of Jamie's team. So I'm a talent acquisition consultant here at NES. I've been here a little bit less time, so I'm in my 4th month or so, but I've been in recruitment for about 4 years, doing agency, and then I moved to internal recruitment as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So the first thing we're going to talk about really is kind of the crux of our conversation. And it's a kind of a bit of a mythbuster question, is that do recruiters and employers still actually read CVs? Why are they still important?
I think people have this idea that recruiters don't even look at a CV, but it's completely the opposite. We need to read CVs in order to do our job properly and thoroughly. We're not doing ourselves, the company, the hiring managers that we're working for, we're not doing them justice if we don't read a CV. I think where people maybe sometimes get the misconception is that recruiters, we can read CVs very quickly. So, we don't spend hours and hours poring over one CV. Me, for example, I can do quite a quick scan and know quite quickly whether it's the right CV that I'm looking for. But 100%, we definitely still need to be reading them. It would be a big portion of our job taken away if we weren't actually even looking at someone's CV.
Yes, to Amber's point, we still very much read CVs. They're so important to compare them to job descriptions. It's not something that we can do without. We do have, we use tools sometimes to help us scan through CVs quicker. But there's always that human element that is really important. I don't think that will ever be replaced.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's a really important point as well, that a common theme that the human element is still one of the most important parts of it is making that connection with people and being able to understand who people are beyond the tools that allow you to kind of make some fundamental decisions, but not necessarily any final ones. So yeah, great answers there. So thinking about that then a little bit, what are the best practices, do you think, for writing a CV and a cover letter for candidates, taking into consideration how you review them?
I would say the first and the most important thing to do is to always craft your CV around the job that you're applying for. So it's really good to have one solid template with all the information in. But the way that recruiters read CVs is they're looking for keywords, they're looking for those buzzwords. So if you are using their language for the job that you're applying for already, that's a huge step in the right direction, because we would scan those words, we would read them, we would pick them up, so they would go into the kind of desk of us to screen. I think for, again, touching on the ATS systems as well, so that when you're uploading your CV into an ATS system, no matter where you're applying for, I would say go onto their careers page, read their language, and start tweaking your CV to add that in there to show the recruiter that you've also done research on the company, and you're not just blanket applying for loads of roles.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Jamie in terms of kind of keywords. And I think for a really good CV, it doesn't need to be pages and pages. I don't think it needs to be as detailed as some people maybe think that it should be. If you maybe did a career change and you've moved into a different path in a different role and industry, then sometimes your kind of historic experience isn't really that relevant, and it's taking away some of the space where you could be detailing much more key, impactful points. So I think try to keep it a little bit more shorter, but make the context as detailed and impactful within that kind of shorter space. So the keywords that you kind of did in that role, any kind of technology that you've used. I think a really good thing that people don't always add into a CV is the impact that they made into the business. So, if you've done a project and saved the business a lot of money, for example, if you were a recruiter, how many people you kind of brought into the business, or, amount that you billed. Kind of key statements like that will really grab a recruiter's eye, and it gives us answers to questions that we're thinking without us having to kind of really dig too deep and kind of scroll through a lot of information that might not actually be that relevant.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to jumble the questions around a little bit because I think that this will fit a little bit more for what we're talking about here. But just in considering how they build CVs, there's a lot, certainly most recently, there's more and more tools in terms of AI and AI support. Firstly, as well, do you notice when a candidate has used AI on their CVs? Is it detrimental? Is it useful for people who maybe struggle with CVs? How does AI balance and AI tools and the tools that are available for CVs? How does that help or not?
No, I just think it is so helpful, and I would never discourage people from using it, because why would you not? Not everybody finds it natural to write a CV. Some people can find it quite hard to talk about themselves and kind of sometimes I think kind of be proud to try and show what you've done. Some people, it's hard to try and get that onto paper. So I think using a tool like AI, 100% go for it. But I will say that sometimes you can tell with the tone of how it's written that it is purely been AI. So as much as I would encourage people to use it, I would say you can't rely on it, because it's not always going to do you justice. It's not always going to be 100% right and accurate. So yeah, I can tell when people use it. I love it. I think, yeah, absolutely. If you need that support, definitely. But I would always go back over, read through what it gives you, and kind of rewrite it in your own tone and your own style, and just make sure that it is actually pulling the right information and giving off the right impression that you want to kind of showcase.
Yes. AI is the future, whether we like this or not. And from a recruiter perspective, from a candidate perspective, people are using it within their daily lives. So someone like me, I'm dyslexic. I find it so useful to run through Chat GPT, for example. But I'm managing that, right? So I'm putting the information, I'm pulling the information that's relevant to go into that. What I'm using it for is to reformat it, and also to check for, grammar errors. For example, you can also use Grammarly. So I would say, don't shy away from using ChatGPT, but just remember that you need to feed it the right information. So you still need to pull that information together. But ChatGPT can help you use those, those keywords that you're kind of pulling that are vital to be on your CV.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. It's really good information. I think that's really useful to know about. So another thing beyond CVs, certainly many years ago when I started looking for a job, one of the more important things that I was told was your CV needs to be up to date and important, but cover letters was also an important thing. My question is, in terms of the information you get from candidates, how important are cover letters in comparison to CVs today compared to how a while back?
That's a really interesting question, and it's something that my team have discussed at length recently, as it happens. I think that the times have changed. Cover letters, when were once important to sell yourself, I think really where you're selling yourself now is the details are in your CV. Um, a lot of ATS systems now, when you apply, they have a text box there for you to do just that, to add in information. And really, recruiters don't have time to read long cover letters if they have hundreds of applicants. The only time I think it would be a valuable tool and to kind of add a little bit extra in your description on your application is something that you think that the recruiter will need to know. So that could be visa status or upcoming holidays or reasons why you might have changed jobs recently, something that's just short and sweet and that's going to support the recruiter. But I don't think that we need to really detail and kind of your personality type and all of that, because that's really what we will screen you on. A cover letter is almost like that initial screening, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with Jamie, and I think historically cover letters have been used, and you were encouraged to write these and craft these kind of long letters about why you were the great fit for the position. But I also think if you're taking on board some advice and tailoring your CV to specific positions or specific companies, then essentially you'd just be duplicating. A copy letter would be exactly what you're kind of having in your CV, just in a much longer form. And when you've got recruiters who are working multiple roles with hundreds of applications, realistically, they're not going to have the time to fully spend reading each and every cover letter. And I think you could really kind of maximize your opportunity to have it instead on your CV. And I think Jamie made a really good point as well about the screening calls that talent acquisition have with candidates before kind of going through to an interview stage. Because for us, this is just a little bit of like an informal conversation. We want to learn a bit more about candidates, and we can also tell them a bit more context about the role. So for me, that's the point that a candidate can say, okay, this point you've just made about the role, here's how I've demonstrated it in a previous role, or this is why I'm really keen to learn this skill. And it's just a bit more conversational, and it's a bit more, to go back to the human element, it's a bit more people orientated. It's more of like a two-way discussion, and I think it's a lot easier to convey what candidates are trying to get across, much easier to do it on a phone call rather than a cover letter that unfortunately might not be able to get read.
That makes sense. I think that's good advice, and how things have progressed over the years. And we will kind of cover the future as well. But what I wanted to do first was, and I'll start with you, Amber. So a candidate has, maybe they've used AI to help them, but they now have crafted their CV, they've read the job description, they've tailored the CV to the job. Before they send it to yourselves or to a recruiter or a hiring company, what are the other things that they can do just to kind of make sure that CV is ready to be sent?
What really helps, and I have done this before for kind of family and friends, is get somebody else to read it. Somebody, a family member, a friend perhaps. Obviously, I have friends who are also in recruitment, so when I've been in the thick of job searches, my recruiter friends have had a look at my CV. And I think it really helps to have like a fresh pair of eyes, just to kind of go over, check that it all makes sense. Because also sometimes people in very maybe technical roles, you want to make sure that although your CV is detailed, it's easy to read for people who might not have that same level of expertise as you. You know, talent acquisition, we work a lot of different roles. We're not experts in every single area. I would love to be, but I'm not. So I want to make sure a CV is readable to me and cohesive and understandable. So yeah, my probably top tip before you send it out anywhere is have somebody else just cast a fresh pair of eyes over it, sanity check it for you, make sure everything looks okay before you kind of send it out to any applications.
Additionally, I think it's worth thinking about your LinkedIn profile. So let's say, you've had your family member cast over your CV. You think, right, I'm ready to send this. One of the first things that the recruiter will do is go to your LinkedIn profile as well to kind of cross-reference what you've said in your CV, but also to learn any more information. And you'd be surprised, it's not just the profile we look at. We look at what you've posted, what blogs might have written, what groups you've joined. To confirm that you're a real person and not a bot. But also it just gives you that extra bit of knowledge about your kind of behaviors. So I would say it's really important, to update your LinkedIn and almost have it like a mini CV and keep active on there as well.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, a really good point. I think social media is an integral part on both sides of the recruitment process, with candidates who will analyze a job based on a company's social media presence. Your social media presence is obviously critically important for the cultural fit of the company and making sure that you're going to fit what their brand is. So I suppose it's a kind of like a pre-check that both sides can do, really. My last question, and I'll come to you first, Jamie, on this one, is thinking about the future now. Just from your perspective and the way technology is changing, how do you think the CV application process is likely to change in the next sort of 5 years or so?
It's a good question. I think there's definitely going to be change. The rise of AI, just even in the last couple of years, has just been so prolific. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I still think that people will always have to apply for a role. They'll always have to have a CV. What format that is may change. It may be something digital, a lot more digital. But I don't think massively is going to change in terms of CVs. We will always, as we said, need a CV. We will always need that information to be able to liken it to the job description. Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest change. I guess it depends on what's happening else in the world. So what's happening in the economy, I think that will also dictate the job market. Like COVID, for example, that really changed the market in the way that people kind of applied for jobs, but also in general, the way that they worked. People started to work remotely. So I think there's two kind of aspects to this. There's the digital and AI change, but also what the market is going to be saying in the next kind of 5 years. It really comes down to what's happening in the world and across the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think AI is just completely going to be a lot more prolific in the future and even more, going to have even more use than it does now. I do think that it's never going to completely overtake the recruitment side. So there's always, I think, going to be a human element in the recruitment process. You can never take that away because as amazing as AI is, and I honestly, I'm a really big fan, so it takes a lot for me to say it, as amazing as it is, it can't replicate the exact role of a recruiter. It might try, but it still misses things. It still makes mistakes. So I think we'll always have that human element. But I do think that something we will see that we've seen even just in the past couple of years is just recruitment processes becoming a lot more streamlined. So obviously we use a lot of applicant tracking systems now. I think we will have even more of them that have AI built into them. So I think, yeah, we'll see probably a lot more of a faster, more efficient recruitment process, but always with that human behind the ATS as well, having to kind of pick that phone up and actually have those conversations, because ultimately that's the best way to hire.
Yeah, absolutely. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the people that are hiring are going to be working with other people, and that fit will always be the ultimate piece of importance.
Hmm.
Great. So that's really good conversation today. I think we've got some really good points and some really good advice and tips for candidates who are looking to kind of brush up their CV, understand the process, demystify a little bit on what happens to their information and how they can kind of maximize their chances of being seen, which is the first step in their new role. So Jamie, Amber, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you having us.
Thanks, Matt.
This has been Engineering Pro with me, Matt Nicholson, and our speakers Jamie Harris and Amber Sutch. If you found the information in this podcast useful, or you'd like to know more, you can head over to our website at www.nesfircroft.com or follow us on social media. You can upload your CV, search open roles in the energy industry, or find your local office if you'd like to contact us for more advice or information. Thanks for tuning in.